He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. We've got a great show today, but before we get to it, I want to mention just a couple of things. It was a beautiful weekend on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The weather was amazing. People were going to the beach. I've seen some mixed reviews about that. I mean, some people have taken pictures that lie. I'll explain that in a second. Most people are practicing social distancing. You know, I went down for myself on a bike ride and kind of checked it all out. There may be a few young people that are being careless, and I think the most important thing is it's a big beach. You can get out there and enjoy it and socially distance, keep your family unit together, and get some fresh air, put some fresh, footprints on the sand, so to speak. But pictures do lie. I've seen a couple of pictures on Facebook where people have taken the picture looking down the beach, zoomed in a little bit. It makes it look like everybody's really, congregated closely, up tight together. But if you go up to the Highway 90 and look back, you see there's really sufficient space between people for the most part. I mean, there's always going to be someone careless. And I think we got to remember, in this the first conversation we're going to be having today, it's going to be a really good reminder of how important it is for us to practice social distancing, and we'll get to that in a second. In the second segment, we're going to have Andrew Fofo Gillich, the mayor of Biloxi, and we're going to talk about the beach and the beginning of the opening of non-essential businesses and just kind of get his up-to-date point of view about things. So now I'm going to turn to my friend Alan Baker, who is a captain pilot for United Airlines, lives in Gulfport, flies out of Houston, and he's an incredibly trained man, as you'll about to see here in just a second. But good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Ricky. Thanks for having me on.
I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you. I know you've been out there flying a lot, so you know the impact on the airlines, you know the impact on pilots. You've been watching from the airlines' perspective. You've been also, of course, watching it from the people who are flying's perspective and all the different things you've had to put in place to keep people safe. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second. But I was really interested in seeing your resume. I had no idea that you have over 13,000 hours of flying. You've been in both the Air Force and the Navy. You have flown just about every major jet there is, a couple of different trainers. You've done the Hornet, the Skyhawk. And then in terms of the commercial industry, 737, 747, 777, 756, A320, and you said you didn't list them all. But here's my point. If I have to fly, I'm going to pray that you're my pilot. Let's put it that way.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So where did you find your love of flying?
Oh, my gosh, Ricky. Early. I can hardly remember a time in my life when that wasn't my focus. When I was about 4 years old, my dad took me out to the airport in Oklahoma City to pick up a family member who was flying in to visit all the way from Dallas. And I saw these majestic, engined creatures coming down and landing and then taxiing up and blowing air around. I thought that was about the coolest thing ever. And from that point on, I had some form of airplane model or something in front of me, or later on, models hanging from the ceiling. And about age six, you may remember a TV series called 12 O'Clock High.
Oh, yeah.
B-17, 51s, and I was able to make the distinction between the beautiful, and stately B-17s, but then the hot and fast P-51 Mustang. And after that, all I wanted to be was a fighter pilot. And everything in my life, all the way through targeting the Air Force Academy for follow-on education, university level, and in pilot training, and thereafter. And when I basically, flying fighters is not something one can do all your life. At some point, you run out of quarters. You get a little bit too old for pulling, 7, 8, 9 Gs. It's hard on the back, hard on the neck, and once I ran out of quarters, I still wanted to fly. And airlines provided pretty much a seamless connection, continuity for my career. And I've been doing that now for 24 years.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. I mean, you joined United Airlines in 1995,
Yes, I did.
and you've seen a lot in those years, haven't you?
There's been a lot of water under that bridge, a lot of clouds under the wing line.
So, let's talk about the industry for a little bit. I did a little research this morning just to try to update myself on what's happening, and of all the industries that could be affected pretty dramatically by changes that may occur as a result of social distancing over the long haul. The airline industry could be very significantly affected, and I didn't realize this, and you can talk more about this, but I didn't realize that as a result of the CARES Act and the billions of dollars that are going to be going to airlines as a result of what Axios calls a lifeline, that in fact the U.S. taxpayer now becomes a shareholder of those organizations that take the money. And I didn't take your airline for a good reason. I just took Delta as an example. Delta took $5.4 billion. What that essentially does is give the U.S. taxpayer a 1% stake in Delta, or 6.4 million shares at $24.39 a share over 5 years. And it ties them with Managed Account Advisors, I assume is a venture capital firm, for 12th place as the largest shareholder of Delta. I didn't pull United because I didn't want to cause you to have to evaluate the business side of United, but this lifeline was really important, wasn't it?
It was huge. It was in fact a lifeline, not just up for the corporation and the corporate leaders, but more importantly, I think for the workers. I think I made the point earlier that an idle airline employee is an unpaid airline employee. Almost all of us are hourly employees, even up through the airline pilots. We are paid by the hour. If you see us hanging out in the airport in one of those chairs, or sauntering through with our rolling luggage behind us, we're not on the clock during those times. My clock starts when we release brakes for pushback, and it stops once we set the brakes and the door opens up at the destination. And any time between the second and the first event is unpaid time.
Wow, that's incredible. So, just coming back to the lifeline, the fact is that it's going to be tough enough as it is when you just think about what the realities of flying
Right.
and the need for social distancing. It's going to affect the pricing structure. It really will affect everything. And then there's the bigger question, which we'll get into a little bit later, and that is, how will the flying public begin to embrace flying? How does the business community embrace it? How has technology and teleconferencing and all those aspects begun to change things? There's a lot to think about as it relates to the airline industry. But let's start with this. Just in general, what's your overall view of how the industry has been affected? Just talk us through what your perspective is on that.
Well, you were very astute in observing that there are two kinds of flyers out there. There are the business travelers and the recreation travelers, tourists, if you will, but leisure travelers. The business travelers they are going to meetings to connect, to do business, and they are usually in a hurry. Their schedules are tight. And typically, the marketing aspect of that gets more money per flight from this group. The leisure travelers they may not be in such a big hurry, and they will be shopping for sales and bargains, and they are not completely disrupted by changes in our schedule. So we're dealing with two different groups there. But right now, the economy was soaring. We were on track at United anyway for a banner year, the best year ever in terms of profits, margins, and revenues, and that all came to a screeching halt. And it wasn't because United was negligent or because the economy went sour. It was because the federal government, I think, wisely clamped down on travel from the place where the virus was coming from, and then the other places where the virus was coming from, and finally everywhere. and we're flying about a 10% schedule, and there's just no way, we are configured to survive that absent the kinds of intervention that the CARES Act has given us.
Yeah. What's so interesting about the stopping of those flights is that, we're not going to get into the political dimension of this because that's a whole nother conversation, but it plays out on the political dimension as if the president could have acted differently and stopped the virus. But the truth is, by the time we became aware of it, it had already been injected into America. And the reality was we were just trying to slow it down. Even in the efforts that we're involved with today with social distancing and all that, it's not going to stop it. It's just going to slow it down so we can manage it better. And by the way, Alan, it's teaching people new behaviors that will change the way they perceive germs and bacteria and all these other things for the rest of their lives. Hey, let's do this. When we come back, you don't have to
convince me of anything. I've been flying with these for the last couple of months.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your life as a pilot, the kind of, I was interested to learn about cargo and all that. So after the break, we're going to come back and continue to talk about the situation that you're facing today as a pilot. We'll be back with Alan Baker from Gulfport, who's a pilot for United Airlines, after this break.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Facebook. Facebook.com/SuperTalk MS Coast 103.1.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We're having a fascinating conversation with Alan Baker, who is a pilot from Gulfport who flies for United Airlines out of Houston. He has logged over 13,000 hours of flying. He's been in the Air Force, the Navy. He's been a significant trainer for a lot of his career. So this is a man that if you ever want to fly United, you want to hope that he's your pilot. But what we were talking about is kind of life in the world of a pilot these days. And what is it like to fly in this pandemic situation, Alan? Talk to us about that. What's your average day feel like?
Well, the sense of flying is different. First of all, there's this kind of pervasive sense of fear of where the virus is and maybe who's carrying it. Keep in mind that I'm sitting in a metal tube rocketing through the upper atmosphere with another guy sitting about 3 feet away that I can reach over and touch at any point in time, vice versa, well inside the contagion zone, if you will, and up to 180 people behind me. We're all in the same circulation system. And, that's something we think about, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate that, to minimize, the exposure. But as far as operationally, obviously our passenger loads are down. I think United's canceled now up to 85, maybe 90% of our flights overall. So, the planes were still operating, the flights that are still operating are carrying passengers, actually an increasing number. Loads are trending upward at the moment, in my observation. But we're also carrying a lot of cargo in the bellies of the airplane. Airplanes carry a lot of cargo. As a matter of fact, passenger flights at United usually carry some amount of the U.S. mail on board. Lately, we've been carrying medicines and medical supplies. Recently carried a bunch of ventilators from San Francisco to Newark. And last week, my last trip, I flew a medical team from Denver into Newark that was going to deploy in the New York City and Newark, New Jersey area, where they're kind of running a little short on help at the moment.
I saw the picture you took of that group. They were enthusiastic about going, weren't they?
I haven't seen a group like that in an airport since shortly after 9/11 and the subsequent troop deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, the coming home.
Yeah, that was awesome to see. So how has it affected you personally? I mean, you're wearing a mask. I assume that passengers are wearing masks. And to talk us about that. And I love the comment you made about you have a pretty clean cockpit these days, don't you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I didn't realize how dirty those cockpits were until we started cleaning them with disinfectant Lysol wipes before every single flight. the buttons, the knobs, the switches are all glistening. The throttles have never been so clean and shiny. But so we do that before every flight. During flight, the flight attendants themselves are wearing masks all the time, and I think most of them are wearing gloves. Where they observe, the social distancing protocol. They have a bigger workspace than I do. But there are, in a lot of ways, it's easier. For example, there's no line for taking off. We never have to hold for landing, and there's no crowd at the gate, the boarding area. Things are happening pretty quick. I have been on time or early every single leg for the last 3 weeks.
So, really, since 1995, with an increasing amount of planes, you've been out taxiing and in long lines, and you're not having to deal with that now. That's got to be strange.
It's strange. It's sort of like it's not absolutely post-apocalyptic in the airports or out on the taxiways and runways, but later on, when we get to layover, that's kind of creepy, actually, being in a downtown urban area in some of these nicer, larger hotels, and there is nobody there except a handful of aircrew.
You compared it to the movie Legend with Will Smith.
That's right.
What an incredible image that is.
Yeah.
So, and you're not able to sit around and have beer with your buddies either, are you?
No, that turns out you never know how much you like something until you have to do without it. And I actually very much enjoy going out for a post-flight beer and debriefing with my fellow pilots, and hey, what did you see today that I could have done better? Or if I saw something that I needed to transmit, that's a very important part of how we stay sharp. And we're not getting that right now.
And then in the hotels, you stayed at a bunch of different hotels. Does that feel different?
It feels, especially around mealtime, hardly any of them are operating room service right now. And to go out and get food is a little bit of a venture into the unknown. Imagine Will Smith walking around those deserted streets trying to find a Chick-fil-A or a Chipotle that's open on a takeout basis.
Wow, that's so strange. That is really
totally strange.
So, as you look forward, what are you most afraid of going forward?
Right now, I'm most afraid of being an unwitting vector for this virus. Again, the environment that I operate in is potentially, a vector for the coronavirus. And I've always been very healthy. I've had flu maybe 3 times in my life, and I would be one of the ones that would have it and not know it, and that's my biggest fear. When I come home, for example, my arrival is nothing like it used to be. A long time ago, when I was in the Air Force in Europe, we practiced decontamination procedures for a nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare environment. It involved, the first thing you do is come through and you pull a handle, and a massive shower of water comes and washes any particulates off, and then you undress, and then wash off again with sterile soap, and then put a new uniform for whatever you're going to do inside. And it's not exactly like that, but I do shed my airline uniform by the washing machine by the door, and then basically walk in my skivvies and shower and get dressed in whatever I'm going to have in the house, and then I greet my wife and my dogs, and
Hey, so Alan, come back to something. You heard me talking about the beach a minute ago, and I think my observation is, for the most part, people are observing social distancing outside the family units. You may see family units that are close together, and you may see a few kids that are not paying attention the way they need to, and I don't know how to get the message across to them. But this notion about being a vector. Now, in your case, you're inside this airplane where, all it takes is one person being in that airplane, and you can talk a little bit more about that. But how important is it for people who are listening to really be focused on, it's not just you getting it, it's that if you get it and don't know you have it, you can give it to someone else. That's the sinister thing about this particular virus. Talk about that for a second, because that's such a powerful, important statement, actually.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm not a medical doctor or a pharmacist or especially an epidemiologist, familiar with the details of this. But as I understand it, the viral load is important. How much of the blast of the virus carrying droplets, get to you, hit you. So if somebody coughed 6 feet or 10 feet away from you, you're going to get less of a load than if somebody coughed right up in your face. And you can do something about that. That's what the face masks are for primarily, as I understand it.
Yeah.
As far as in a beach scenario, the potential viral load goes way down, with the distance, and what constitutes a crowd at our beach is probably a lot lower density than, say, someplace like Rio or South Beach, Miami, or San Tropez, or someplace where people literally are elbow to elbow, even on the beach. The potential for contagion there would be high.
So, Alan, we're getting to the end of our time together. What I want to do is come back to you in a few weeks and just check in with you. I know that you're kind of off now. You have a week of vacation, then you're kind of on call for a period of time. We'll come back to you and check to see how that's going, and also just know that as long as you got pilots like Alan Baker flying for you, and there's a lot of them. They're very dedicated to this, and they're going to make sure people fly as safely as possible.
Indeed.
And again, we'll be back to you in a few weeks and talk to you more about how things are going, Alan. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Ricky. It's been great.
I appreciate it very much.
Be safe out there.
We'll see you in just a minute with Fofo Gillich.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, "Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast."